want to even ask and put in a request until it's...
It would be wrong.
Right, exactly. Yeah. All right. Good afternoon. I will start with an update that we just received from our colleagues in Rome at the World Food Programme on the incident we talked about yesterday. Hold on a second. Could I ask you to close the door, please? Thank you. Sorry, we will... we're starting off with an update from our colleagues, the World Food Programme, who tell us they've been, who've sent us the following update following that tragic security incident that took place on February 22nd. The security incident involved a group of 7 people traveling in 2 World Food Programme vehicles on the road from Goma to Rutshuru in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where they were planning to visit a World Food Programme school feeding project. The group comprised of 5 employees of the World Food Programme who were accompanying the Italian ambassador to the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as well as his security escort. The group left Goma at approximately 9 a.m. local time. At approximately 10:15 a.m. local time, the 2 vehicles were stopped by an armed group, and all passengers were forced to disembark from the cars. The World Food Programme driver of one of the vehicles, Mustapha Milambo, was killed at this time. The remaining 6 passengers were then forced into the surrounding bush at gunpoint, where there was an exchange of fire. During the exchange of fire, the Italian ambassador, During the exchange of fire, the Italian ambassador, Luca Attanasio, and his security escort, Vittorio Iacovacci, were mortally injured and subsequently died. The 4 other passengers in the group, all World Food Programme staff, evaded their abductors and are safe and accounted for. They include the World Food Programme Deputy Country Director in the DRC, Rocco Leone, WFP School Feeding Program Assistant Fidele Zabandora, World Food Programme Security Officer Mansour Rwagaza, and the World Food Programme driver Claude Mukata. The UN Department of Safety and Security is leading a detailed review of the incident. This morning, the Secretary General spoke to members of the Security Council on the topic of maintenance of international peace and security, climate and security. He told them that while the science of climate is clear, our duty is even clearer. We need to protect the people and communities that are being hit by climate disruption. The Secretary General stressed that unless we protect those most exposed and susceptible to climate-related impacts, we can expect them to become even more marginalized and their grievances to be reinforced. High levels of inequality can weaken social cohesion, can lead to discrimination, scapegoating, rising tensions and unrest, increasing the risk of conflict. Those who are already being left behind will be left behind even further, he added. He also emphasized that the role of big emitters have in tackling climate crisis, saying that we look to them to lead by example in the coming months. This is a credibility of test of their commitment to people and planet, he said. He also urged Council members to use their influence during this pivotal year to ensure that the success of COP26 and to mobilize others, including international financial institutions, the private sector, do their part. I have a statement for you regarding the looting of the Saraf Umrah site in Darfur. The site, as you may know, had been a base for 2 formed UN police units. When the joint UN-AU mission ended its mandate at the end of December, the site was closed and then handed over to North Darfur state authorities as scheduled on January 21st, with assurances that it would be transformed into a vocational center. Instead, the site was looted on 18th February. The Secretary General condemns the looting of the first site, Saraf Umrah in Darfur, handed over to the Sudanese authorities following the end of the UN mandate in December of last year. At a time when community needs in Sudan are increasingly pressing, the site was intended to serve as a vocational training center. Unknown assailants have dashed that opportunity. The Secretary General calls on the Sudanese authorities to investigate the incident and ensure sufficient security presence for subsequent handovers so that facilities are preserved for civilian use as intended. And the Secretary, turning to Niger, the Secretary General commends the government and people of the Republic of Niger for holding the runoff presidential elections on February 21st, despite significant security and humanitarian challenges, as well as, of course, as the pandemic. The Secretary General condemns the killing of election officials in the Tillabéri and Difa regions on election day. He also condemns the sporadic attacks mounted by armed gunmen against election officials in parts of the country, and conveys his deep condolences to the bereaved families and wishes a speedy recovery to those injured. The Secretary General reiterates the commitment of the UN to accompany the government and people of Niger on their efforts to pursue stability and sustainable development. And on Myanmar, you will have seen that in a tweet, the Secretary General called on the Myanmar military to stop the repression immediately and stressed the need to release prisoners and end the violence, respect human rights, and the will of the people. Also on Myanmar, the International Labour Organization today said it has received allegations that the police and military are conducting door-to-door searches for unionists in Yangon. The ILO urges the military authorities to ensure that to cease all aspects of harassment and intimidation against these workers, particularly young female workers, and ensure that all workers can exercise their rights to free expression. Also expressing concern was the UN Population Fund, which warned that the instability could disrupt essential services to meet sexual and reproductive health needs of women and girls, including safe pregnancy and childbirth. UNFPA said this will have serious, even life-threatening implications if timely access to emergency obstetrics and newborn care is compromised or not provided in general, and for the most disadvantaged and vulnerable communities in particular. The Secretary General, Special Envoy for Libya, Jan Kubish, has continued his meetings and telephone calls with Libyan and international officials. During his calls this past week, he welcomed the progress achieved so far by Libyan stakeholders in different areas and stressed the importance that all relevant institutions to respect the roadmap and continue working for its full implementations. Among those calls, on Sunday, he spoke with the Minister of the Interior, Fatih Bashaga, to express grave concern over the serious security incident that had targeted his convoy. And a new report released today by the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan and the UN Human Rights Office warns that there will be a rise in civilians killed and injured in Afghanistan following the start of the peace negotiations in September. That there was a rise. Nevertheless, overall numbers for 2020 were down due to lower civilian casualty rates earlier in the year. The total number of 8,820 civilian casualties in 2020 fell below 10,000 for the first time since 2013 and was down 15% from 2019. The UN mission said that while the reduced numbers are welcome, documentation shows the lower levels of overall harm were particularly offset by uncharacteristic increase in civilian harm in the last quarter of 2020. The mission pointed out that distressing feature of the conflict remains the shocking and disproportionate impact on Afghan women and children. They make up 43% of all civilian casualties. More women were killed in the conflict in 2020 than any other year since UNAMA began systematic documentation of these numbers in 2009. Afghanistan remains amongst the deadliest places in the world to be a civilian. The full report is online. And the humanitarian response plan for Mali was launched yesterday by the UN, our humanitarian partners in the Malian government. The plan seeks $563 million to assist 4.7 million people in the immediate need. That's 1.1 million more than last year. Last year, violence and insecurity have spread from the country's north to the central regions across the border into Niger and Burkina Faso. Growing instability has led to a new surge of internal displacement. The humanitarian coordinator for Mali, Baranga Gassar, I'm not having a good day today on names, Gassarabwe, urged relevant parties to address the needs of affected communities adequately. She stressed the importance of increasing funding and having timely financial contributions to assist populations in need and strengthen their resilience to shocks. On a couple of dates on vaccines, today marks a major milestone in Mongolia, which rolled out the first batch of COVID-19 vaccines today. Our UN team there, led by resident coordinator Tapan Mishra, has been supporting authorities to prepare for this and for Mongolia's inclusion in the COVAX facility. The UN team played a key role in supporting the national vaccination plans and ensured that the vaccines will reach priority groups, including healthcare workers and others at risk first. We're helping authorities to secure vaccines to cover 60% of Mongolia's population this year. That's some 2 million people. WHO helped to coordinate the vaccination plan and also trained health and frontline workers. UNICEF provided for cold and supply chains, as well as working with communities to counter misinformation and build trust in vaccines and the health systems. Also on vaccines, and also good news, UNICEF has sent 100,000 syringes and 1,000 safety boxes for COVID-19 vaccination operations to the Maldives by air freight. That's from their warehouse in Dubai. This is part of the first wave of COVID-19 related syringe shipments to begin rolling out in the coming days. Others in the first wave include Côte d'Ivoire and Sao Tome and Principe. And vaccine good news closer to home. The Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, is scheduled to receive his second dose of the COVID-19 this Friday at a school in the Bronx, if I'm not mistaken. He received his first dose on the 28th, and we are thankful for the New York City partners to help facilitate this second dose, and we will again have some video and photo of that grand event. Turning to Central America, the World Food Program today said hunger in El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua has increased almost fourfold in the past 2 years. That's from 2.2 million people in 2018 to 8 million people in 2021. This is a result of economic crisis caused by the pandemic and years of extreme climate events. WFP says it plans to assist 2.6 million people in El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua in 2021 and requires $47.3 million over the next 6 months. For $47 million, you can buy an apartment in New York, or you can give the money to WFP. You can get a penthouse in New York, rather, for that. Yesterday afternoon, Helen Lalim, the head of the UN mission in Haiti, told council members that as the country prepares to enter a tense pre-electoral period, the polarization that has defined most of President Moise's term in office has become more acute. Sign of shrinking civic space abound. An already alarming humanitarian situation continues to deteriorate, she added. The country's progress towards achieving the SDGs appears to have stalled or backslid. She also expressed her deep concern with the resurgence in kidnappings. Only a democratic renewal resulting from a prompt holding of credible, transparent, and participatory elections can provide Haiti with the opportunity to overcome its protracted political crisis. She said, a couple more notes and we're done. The International Labor Organization today released a report on the World Employment and Social Outlook 2021. According to the report, digital labor platforms have increased fivefold worldwide in the last decade. ILO noted that the challenges for platform workers relate to working conditions, regularity of work and income, and the lack of access to social protection, freedom of association, and collective bargaining rights. Half of online platform workers earn less than $2 an hour, and some platforms have significantly gender gaps. The report says the COVID-19 pandemic has further exposed many of these issues. And I think you also, that yesterday afternoon we issued a statement on behalf of the Secretary General, which he expressed his sadness at the passing of our former colleague, the UN Special Advisor on the Responsibility to Protect, Ed Luck, who passed away on February 16, 2021. During his tenure as Special Advisor from 2008 to 2012, Mr. Luck was instrumental in advancing the conceptual and institutional development of the commitment of the international community to protect populations from genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity. He was a prestigious scholar, author, and leading expert on the United Nations who contributed to the UN in many ways. The Secretary General expresses his deepest condolences to Mr. Luck's family and friends, and I know those of you who've known him will join me in that expression. And just ending on some good news, today we thank Chad, Croatia, and Serbia for their payments in full to 2021 budget. We are up to 54. Mr. Bays.
Three quick ones on news items of the day. While we've been speaking, the Senate in Washington, D.C. has confirmed Linda Thomas Greenfield as the new permanent representative of the U.S. to the UN. What would be the Secretary General's reaction? How does he hope to work with her in the light of the U.S. return to the climate deal and the U.S. trying to get back into the Iran deal?
Well, I think the Secretary General very much looks forward to working with the ambassador on issues of climate, the recovery from COVID, and the many other global issues that are on our shared agenda. You know, and Mr. Guterres has known the ambassador for quite some time, and I think he saw her effectiveness, her dedication in action when they traveled together when she was the head, I think, of the Population Bureau of the State Department, and he was High Commissioner for Refugees. Yep.
A couple of other ones. Protests in Georgia following the arrest of the main opposition leader. Does the UN have a reaction?
Yes, we do. If I wasn't so messy. I think we're following with concern the developments that we're seeing in Tbilisi. It's very important that there be calm, that the issues, the outstanding political issues, be addressed through dialogue, that there be respect for the rule of law, and of course, the democratic process.
One more news story of the day, which is Malaysia and the return of people to Myanmar. I know various parts of the UN have had some comment on that.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I would refer you to UNHCR and IOM. I don't have the details in front of me, but I would. It's always important to reiterate the right of refugees not to be returned against their will, and because that's a violation of international law, and for migrants to be treated with the dignity and respect they all deserve, and respecting their human rights. Celia, and then Mr. Bryce Pease.
Stéphane, I'd like to go back to the DRC. I don't know if you saw that. The Ministry of Interior and Security said in a statement that security services were unable to provide special security measures for the convoy due to lack of information about their presence in that part of the country.
Which ministry? No, but which country?
DRC,
The DRC.
the Ministry of Interior and Security.
Look,
Is it what happened? They did not say where they were.
We will. There are two things that will happen. First, there is a UN review of the incident, the security around the incident. That will be done, and that is being done by the UN Department of Safety and Security. There will have to be a criminal investigation, which is primarily the responsibility of the authorities in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Obviously, from what I understand, the Italians will obviously be involved because of their nationality, and in fact, it was the ambassador and the Carabinieri. So those, and the UN will support those investigations in any way we can. But they will have to. There is an ongoing review of the incident by our own security services. Sherwin.
Thanks, Steph. Given the Secretary General's comments about the inequity around vaccine distribution around the world, calling it wildly uneven and unfair, where does he fall in terms of his support of efforts currently underway at the World Trade Organization in terms of intellectual property waiver proposals as it regards medical products in relation to COVID-19?
Look, those are decisions that are going to have to be taken by the member states of WTO. I think any move that will facilitate the distribution and access to vaccines will be welcome. Obviously, there are issues of rights and law that need to be respected, but the details of how that works out will be up to the WTO. Okay, let me just see if there's anything in the chat. Stefano.
Thank you, Stéphane. Yes, I have two questions. One is on DRC. Yes, you answered that there is going to be an investigation of the UN. My question is, usually when there is an area so dangerous, I believe that just 2 weeks before there were a shootout on the same place with 12 people that died, and the UN as a convoy going with an ambassador in this case, who should be providing security? Is that government of Kinshasa, or in this case, is the UN has its own security? And Blue Helmet, they have I believe 30,000, 25,000 in Congo. So who is responsible for the lack of the security in this case?
This was a joint mission with the ambassador and the Italian ambassador and the World Food Program. There will be a review, an internal review by the UN Department of Safety and Security on the security surrounding it. So I don't want to start speculating of who should have been, who should have known what and who should have done what. I think we need the facts to bear out. I think as you saw, there were security officers with this joint mission, and the road had been deemed safe. But beyond that, I don't want to speculate.
Okay, my question was different. I was asking if you know, not this case, usually, who provides security? If you can answer to this, usually, who
there is no. Let's step away from this incident, right? There is no. Usually there are different configurations that can happen depending on where people are going, who are in the cars, where and so there are all sorts of different options. So I cannot give you a usually answer.
If I may now, second question, there is another part of the world, but with the same problem, security of people that works for the United Nations. It's about Mario Pachola case in Colombia. When last week I asked you the question, if I need to know from you if I understood well, okay? You said there is, because I asked you what happened to the investigation, the UN investigation about the case. Is it suicide or not for the UN? And you answer, and tell me if I'm correct, you practically answer that you say the UN did its work, and it is through the Colombian and through the Italians to ask the UN for the information. Did you, if I understood well, okay, means that you answer me practically that the UN came out with the case in the sense the UN has its answer. It just is waiting for the Italians and the Colombian to ask for it. Is this
no? I don't. I'm not sure what question they asked, but what I can tell you is that from the UN side, we have been cooperating actively with the Italian investigators and with the Colombian investigators who are leading the criminal investigation.
If I may just a quick follow-up. So to the straight question, did the UN finish to do its own investigation on the case and has an answer to this?
What I can tell you, I wish every answer was yes or no. Would make these briefings a lot shorter, at least on my end. What I can tell you is that our cooperation with both the Italian investigations and the Colombian investigations is ongoing. Mr. Sato.
Thank you, Stéphane. My question is about the Secretary General's remark at the Security Council this morning, which you mentioned. He criticized the developed countries which hasn't met the obligation of 1,000 billion US dollars by 2020, and the due is already overpassed. Can you tell me how much the gap between what is required and what already have?
Okay, I will have to check that number for you, Sato. I'm sorry, I don't have that with me, but I will check that number for you.
Thank you very much. One more
Okay.
question is
Yeah.
same matter. So he used the terminology of climate disruption. As long as my observation, he frequently used the climate crisis and the climate emergency. Did he have a specific implication by using climate disruption?
Well, I think what he's meaning is that the climate change is disrupting every facet of the world that we live in, and frankly, almost every issue that's on the UN's agenda, especially issues that are on the agenda of the Security Council, which are peace and security issues. Okay, any other questions? I see James reaching for his holster. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. There has been the introduction, it seems, going forward, of a pledge of loyalty to China in the Hong Kong governance system. Seems to be a restriction. It was already a pretty limited role of democracy in Hong Kong, but a restriction on democracy in Hong Kong. What is the Secretary-General's reaction?
Listen, I would just refer you back to what we've already said about the situation in Hong Kong. I have nothing new to add.
Okay. Any update on, you told us about peacekeepers in Juba Airport yesterday?
No, they are, as far as I was told this morning, they remain safe in the care of South Sudanese and UNHCR authorities, and they're being assessed. But their right to request asylum and protection is being taken extremely seriously and is being respected.
And finally, on the SG's vaccination, I remember a couple of weeks ago you told us that the UN was very keen not to jump the queue, but there were arrangements for a small group of essential staff potentially to be vaccinated. Is there any update on who they are and when that will be?
No updates to share at this point. Okay, Brendan, if you want to speak, I will wave.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.